before the questions and answers, I know many of us here, many of you do not really have an idea. Unfortunately, we don't have the map of Nigeria to put the regions they were talking about in perspective. But Nigeria is a country in West Africa. I was once in France because my graduate studies was in France, where I lived and studied. And in those days, someone asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Nigeria." In French, it's called Nigeria. So I said, "I'm from Nigeria." I said, "Okay, Nigerian," because there is another country called Niger. And the person didn't understand that it's another country called Nigeria. So the person was thinking that only Niger exists in West Africa. So that's actually to let you understand that there is another country called Nigeria, and it's not Niger. I know all of us know Nigeria. But I think your presentations have raised a lot of issues in African traditional religions, also our African philosophy. There are many thinkers who've been working on mental decolonization with respect to African traditional religions, right? The kidnapping of religion completely and baptizing it with Western ideology and thereby negating the African traditional religious values somehow that you mentioned in terms of baptizing people, taking Christianity as an example with a name that is alien, right, to the people. For instance, my name is Basil, right? And sometimes I ask myself, what does it mean? But I have another name called Udo, which means peace, right? So, and that's why I'm working for peace, because that's my traditional Nigerian name. But that is a very important factor. But the question that I know many of us will be asking is, how exactly could we, in the 21st century, right, kind of go back again to those practices, African traditional practices, where we are in 21st century. How can we revitalize the African traditional practices that are actually dying off? Okay. Right, and so that's very important points. I mean, just hold on a little bit, and we have many scholars, just as you said as well. There is a professor in Fordham University here, Father Ryan. We had an opportunity of talking with Father Ryan, who worked in Nigeria as a Jesuit father for many years, right? So he was in Abuja, and he was also in many other states in Nigeria. But he lived in Nigeria so many years. And one of the things that he told us is that in Nigeria, there is another ethnic group called the Yorubas. The Yorubas, in one of the books I've been reading recently on intercultural communication and competence, many scholars have been citing the Yoruba people as people who have the culture of tolerance, right? So how could we use that and use revitalize the Yoruba culture that actually supersedes the foreign religious practices or whatever, now to use that and inculcate it in interfaith dialogue. So, but again, I yield right now, and if you have a question, please raise up your hand, and I will begin by George, because he actually raised up his hand first.
Maybe I should start on a lighter note. The last two speakers, even though they are from Nigeria, they had unfavorably more time than I did. I think they had more than 20 minutes.
Really?
But again, it's in the spirit of tolerance. Otherwise, I would have disrupted this gathering since I was treated unfairly, but that's also an example in tolerance. Two things I want to say very quickly. My brother was making a presentation here, and he was talking about Boko Haram somewhere in 1995. I think Boko Haram as an issue in Nigeria dates much far back than that. It's rooted in the Burunkutu riots that started in the early 1980s. That's the origin. Secondly, I had also thought that two of your papers would actually highlight the institutional processes about interfaith dialogue in Nigeria, which has really gone very far. And I thought that my priest would really highlight what the Catholic Church is doing in that regard. There is a far richer work in promoting interreligious dialogue in Nigeria, to the extent that right now you find increasingly high level of presentation of those elements of various religions in Nigeria. Anytime you find some examples of this religious extremism. Bishop Kuka is leading the Hope idea of interreligious dialogue, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese. And Cardinal Naikon in Abuja is leading that other aspect. So I think in Nigeria we are beginning to really move in that direction. My argument was that one would have expected the state to be much more forthcoming so that they can use the law and politics to deal with the political elements of extremism, which they have not been able to do sufficiently very well. But I think we need to also project these elements so that we can support these overwhelming efforts by the church in Nigeria to promote interreligious dialogue. Finally, I think that the elaborate expression of Christianity in Nigeria is helping also to a very large extent to accommodate the African traditional religion as it finds expression in Nigeria. And many of them live in a dual world. They are part of the Christian practice. They are also part of the African traditional religion. I think what is the problem is whether, how do we reconcile this dualism so that we can find them on one face and then deal with them as they relate to the shared values of those religions.
Thank you, George. Okay. So can I answer the questions that were raised?
Okay. Well, the best article I have on Boko Haram, which I got that in South Africa, was an African security review written by someone who works with the Nigerian army. And based on Nigeria's military intelligence, it was attributed that they started as Nigerian Taliban in 1995. That's what I have, which was published in the African Security Review in South Africa. Now, but that doesn't mean that, for example, the Maitasin riots in the 80s, and we have a lot of other riots that happened in 81, 82. I believe those, particularly for example, I got to know that the Iranian Revolution of 1979 actually midwifed some of the riots in Nigeria, directly or indirectly. Because some of those riots that happened in the 80s were the bedrock of that Boko Haram as a group, relied on to spread and begin to propound their, I say, un-Islamic ideologies. Because actually, Boko Haram is not a true representation of Islam. And that's the truth. Now, talking about institutional processes which has been going on, well, I used to say, I make reference to some of the scholars of religion in Nigeria, Bolaji Dowu. Somehow, my dad too was a professor of religion before he died 20 years ago. He studied McGill. And they emphasized the fact that we need to de-Arabize Nigerian Islam and de-Westernize Nigerian Christianity. We have a lot of Arabian culture influencing Nigerian Islam. African Islam must be practiced within the context of African culture. African Christianity should be practiced within the context of African Christianity. This will help to integrate African traditional religion properly, and then the issues of misunderstanding he was making reference to will no longer be there. But the Christianity we practice in Nigeria is a Western Christianity. The Islam is Arabized Islam. But Africans have a peculiar identity and culture which is unique to them and which will help African traditional religion to work, to interrelate side by side with this imported faith. When I say imported faith, Christianity and Islam to Nigeria, so that there will be peaceful coexistence and religious harmony. Thank you.
Okay. In line with what Dr. Basil asked about the effort we are making to see that all these African traditional values are inculcated into the African society. Like today, if I may use the Catholic formation system as an example, today we have what we call the theology of acculturation. What is the theology of acculturation? It means to interpret the message of Christianity within the African context. Today, we are championing in the Catholic Church in Nigeria, in Igbo land in particular. We have this idea of when giving African children African names, like you mentioned, something like Onwubiko. Onwubiko is a name given to maybe a family that has experienced series of deaths, and they give birth to a child, and that child happens to survive. They give the child Onwubiko, which means death. Please, let this one survive. So today, in the church, in the Catholic Church in particular, we have in the seminaries, we have think tanks and other institutional bodies that are championing this theology of enculturation, trying to interpret and adapt the message of God, the Christian message, within the context or in the life of the people. So it is no longer going to be a religion that is masked or that is clothed on the people, a religion that doesn't really penetrate into the minds and doesn't have influence in the lives of the people.
Doesn't appeal to them.
Yeah, doesn't appeal to the people. And also, when you study the Christianity of our people, you also see that there is that, how do I put it? That strength between the culture, the African culture, and also the Western culture. So, but just as you said, there is an effort is being made in order to see that all these issues are addressed, at least within the Catholic Church, as far as I know them. Yeah.
We have limited time, but I'm going to take this question from you. Okay. After him, I'll take your question afterwards.
Thank you. I have a problem. This is about the misleading terminologies within the religious context. In the Central African Republic, we have the army of the church that goes on killing and practicing cannibalism on the Muslims. But I don't think this is the true Christianity. Instead, these are criminals. Because Christianity does not at any moment allow killing people, eating their flesh. The same applies to the activities done by whoever is killing innocent people. We have, for example, the soldiers of Christ. Everybody here might belong to that, but does it mean that the soldiers of Christ are killing people, are violent? No. Why do the soldiers of Muhammad become violent? If Islam means peace, Islam means salvation, then it loses its meaning if a handful of followers take up arms and start killing people who are innocent. That means these are moving out of the bracket of peace, and therefore they do no longer become Muslims. Last week, Saudi Arabia extradited its own prince for killing one person. This one was also taken as far as justice is concerned. The Pope in Poland stood up and said that Muslims are not terrorists and terrorists are not Muslims. This means we need to move on an extra mile to clear such misleading terminologies, where we have Muslim fundamentalists. Yes, we have Christian fundamentalists, but these are not the bad fundamentalists. Let us look for those that are bad and treat them as far as justice requires. In situations where we have Al-Shabaab, I think the biggest number here belong to the youth. And Al-Shabaab means the youth.
The youth.
But sincerely speaking, if you are looking for the Al-Shabaab, do we all survive here? Perhaps our parents can survive. But such misleading terminologies are going to kill and finish our communities. And as far as we are concerned, we need to come down to zero down to the disastrous group such that it can be dealt with in dialogue and looking for a political goodwill. Whenever there is no political goodwill, that means we are going to do nothing. We look for the politicians, we look for what they can give in as their input, such that we can put our communities at peace. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take this last question, and you can respond to both questions.
I think it's half a question and half a comment.
Okay,
yeah.
you comment briefly.
As I understand it, and maybe you can help me here. Okay, you did say that African people had their traditional Christianity. It was a means by which, like in other people's religions, and I don't think they called them religions, it was their way of life. It helped them to organize their relationship with their God and how they relate to one another. Then comes Christianity and Islam and say, no, that's not the way you do it. You know what? That was a destruction of Africa. Professor Clark, who is a known Pan-Africanist historian, he used to say, and please forgive me, I don't mean to insult anyone, he said, when another people laugh at your God, that's bad. But when they make you laugh at your own gods, it's your destruction. And that is everything, all of the nets that wove. And this is not to say Africa was perfect before. There were problems. But when you pull that apart, there's this sense of, there's a word we used the other day, and I can't remember right now. It's a sense of anxiety, of not knowing how things fit together. How do you relate to God? If they're saying that our gods were bad, and read Chinua Achebe's Hour of God. A lot of people just read his Things Fall Apart, but the real book to read is Hour of God, because it showed you how the Brits went in, and how there were no prisons before, and how they disrespected the religion, and the priests went mad, and that was the destruction. No more respect for what was traditional. So I am a member of a Christian church. I go 2 or 3 times a year. I have my own service in my house. I don't take communion because I don't know what I'm eating the body of Christ. I don't want to do that. So, and I know that I've been part of a women's group where we try to use some of the African traditional ways to do rites of passages for young girls. And I have done some blessings for babies, and I have used that salt and honey and stuff. And I know people come in and they, what's she doing? What's she doing? And then by the end, everybody is just, wow, that was so wonderful. You know, when they understood the meaning. I'm done. Saying, I don't know if there's any way out, because with the fracturing of all that mesh the society, it's just seemed to be gone so far that I don't know.
So just briefly respond
to that. I want to make a comment from what I wrote there, even though I didn't mention it when I was presenting. It said 3. The forerunner role of earliest Christian missionaries who paved the way to the invading European merchants in the 16th century is well documented in literature and is reflected in this popular statement. When the white man came, he had his Bible in his hands, and we had our lands. He asked us to close our eyes for prayers, but we closed our eyes. But when we opened our eyes, we have his Bible, and he has our lands. This was written by Professor Aguezeala. So I just want to summarize what you said with that.
Let me just say that I know there are a lot of misleading terminologies, and Christianity, Islam, Judaism, African traditional religion, like someone raised in the morning, Sikh religion, Buddhism, all these religions. Religions are good to an extent, but at times, the perception and the worldview, the understanding of the adherents, particularly about the teachings, the scriptures of these religions, is actually what promotes. Well, that's my own opinion, because I ask my students in school, what is the problem? Is it the religious books, or the religion, or the adherents of the religion, or the religious teachings? Students will say, well, it's the adherents. But the adherents have a mind to choose between good and bad. You can choose to kill and choose not to kill. The Quran says, he that killeth a soul is as if he has killed the whole of mankind. Talking about the fact that one soul is as, for you to kill a soul, it's like you've killed the whole world. Talking about the value of a soul. So, but looking at because of what you said about the culture of tolerance among the Yorubas of the southwest of Nigeria, the culture of tolerance is being eroded by so many Western practices now, which has made Africans to lose their originality, particularly Yorubas. The culture of tolerance has always been with us. And if we can use the cultural values inherent within the Yoruba milieu, I'm sure it's going to help to continually foster peace and interfaith dialogue. And I want to close by saying this. I know Nigeria is quite a challenging country now, but I believe that it will get better and better. If people can begin to see something good about the nation, particularly the religious worldview, the religious space of Nigeria, I'm sure with efforts being made, Archbishop Onayekon, Matthew Azankoka, the current secretary of the Anglican Church, the Church of England, Archbishop Idowu Fieron, a lot of them, Reverend Father Professor Kenny, and a lot of them, even the Sultan, Alhaji Muhammad Sahad Abubakar III, the president, the co-chair of the Nigerian Inter-Religious Council, which Professor Olede would have represented here, I'm sure that their efforts is going somewhere. And I'm sure that even though the results may not be too feasible now, gradually it will begin to show, and it will get better and better. Thank you.